O sio Nicod, we blevens tawadon kalele chikedo kohig jos go jo in etalagia de lo coste. Welcome. This is Cherokee 3 here at RSU TV. Today, I believe this is the 33rd Cherokee lesson. I'm glad to be here. Hopefully, you're ready to be exposed to some Cherokee, ready to acquire some language. So today we're going to continue on with a couple more sentences of the story about the snake. As I said, this is a very common story told at Gatillo at the Stomp Grounds. There are a couple different versions of it. In some versions, the snake is has a lot of different colors. In other versions of the story, the snake was white. After we finish, hopefully we'll be able to finish the entire story. And then when we finish it, we'll talk about its significance. It's not a particularly old story, but it's one that is always told at our Gatillo. And it serves a very specific purpose. So then once we finish that, we'll continue to learn about Tojuwasi Kwanid and learn a little bit more about what was going on in Indian Territory and within the Cherokee Nation at the time Tojuwasi Kwanid was alive. Okay, so come. Idalena jalagi idewoni. Let's go ahead and get started, and let's talk some Cherokee, okay? All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and read the first sentence. This is our reading practice, and then we're going to read this new sentence and translate it. So this says, "Uwoduhi unjati inada." Kohig jage sagi ehe gano hili donhi ni gai go hustino ahyo hi hei osta agisti galujik. Okay, that was the sentence we did last time. If you remember, it talks about in days gone by, there was a famous hunter, and he would bring something good to eat when he returned home. Okay? This one says, we'll read it slow, then we'll read it a little bit faster. Sagu ika. Ia-isa, G squaw, de ganehe, juhyo tlahi, ugoheno, usti inada, ganage, no huliti. Okay? Some of those may not make sense to you, but we'll play around with the sounds till they do make sense. So, sawuik, one day. Iaisa, he was walking. One day he was walking. Chisqua, deganehe, carrying birds. G-squaw. Birds. Deganehe. He's carrying something flexible. So you might ask, why we wouldn't use the word for carrying something alive, because we're talking about birds here. But the fact that they're using the word deganehe for something flexible, that is to tell us that the birds are dead. Okay? So we know automatically by this choice of using this verb that the birds are no longer alive. They're not living anymore. They're floppy. They're flexible. Just as a dead bird should be, I guess. So degane. So he's carrying them. Degane. Juhyo tlahi. That he shot. Juhyo tlahi. That he shot. Ugo heno. Then he saw. Ugo heno. Then he saw. Usti, a little. Enot, snake. Gan, ke. Okay. Gan, ke. Gan, ke. Okay. Gan, ke means he was laying. He was laying. Okay. No hulti. No hulti. By the side of the road. No hulti. No hulti. So he was laying by the side of the road. Okay. Let's read through it again. So there's a lot of really great words in there. Hopefully some of them we recognize, like this word no hulti. I believe we've had that word a few times before. So sawu ig ia isa chisqua degane juhyo tlahi ugo heno usti inat ganke no hulti. Okay. So, and then of course, you can see it in the original. Sawu iga ia isa jisqua dega nehe juhyo tlahi ugo heno usti inan ganke no hulti. Okay. So, so that's the second sentence of the story. So, so far the story's been fairly easy, right? Hopefully you've had an easy time following along. So, let's go ahead and continue with the story that we were learning about Tojuwa Sikwanid, okay? All right. He yoleges, he askai ayetli chikadog. Ni yole ganyik, Redbird Smith do don Tojuwa Sikwanid do don jalaki gante. Sida ojali helega he in juske askai. Sagwu yagiyel chanelsko it's ku higsko he udene Tojuwa Sikwanid. Kohijik guye gwoni sonela du sine ojali heli gon udeti yiska. Klaskin do yogan do udeti yiska. Tojuwa Sikwanid udeti yiska inulstan. Anid keduwagi ani yawi ya gatiyo anegon. Gato ke Tojuwa Sikwanid ulskejik. Tojuwa udod Pigsmith do don Sikwanid jalagi ganti do don Only Smith ani yoneg do no se gotlana aski dege san yusti. Tojuwa uji Lizzie Hildebrand do don Iju la jalagi ale a de dege san. Jalagi uweti di stoski dalastane han Lizzie udod. Ijul jukaya leke Uwe tichalagi nandane ha dunihi yune. Do no he hune. Do no he hune. Sorry about that. Let's try that sentence again. I jula jukaya leke uwe tichalagi nandane ha do no he hune. There, that makes more sense. Đi đọt nở whisky kề xe ủ đốt. Nu deners to chú hoa ani ka yơ lê kê đi ni nở whisky uni no he le uni no se le sikwani to chú hoa đi đọt thi nê hi ni gals tani ni galstanisa Plaskin he heste ni galstana. Okay, let's read through that again. I got a little ahead of myself. Okay. Nu denas toju hua ani gayeleke dini na whisky uni no sele sikwani toju hua di da tinehi ni da galstani sa Plaskin he heste ni galstana. Okay, let me read it one more time. Nu denas toju hua ani gayeleke dini na whisky uni no sele to sikwani toju hua di da tinehi ni da galstani sa Plaskin he heste ni galstana. There we go. Sometimes Sikwanid unasa agusasam tojuhua udehyoti. Anoji ayanwi yagese agusasam. Nulstanen ale uweti uni no hetlan ani jalaki ani gusa ale ani noji dokta he agusa sam. Osta de lo kwaski ge he tojuwa. Adanto ale ton gawoniski ge he. Du yukta al nole ji yukta ge he. Sabu yagayel chanelsko et skusonelsko. Tojuwa anikatuwagi ajista negesta skadugi didatini dohi gehe. Na hi yu chake sanjalaki aneha aya tohi hangehe. Une gujit nandaneha. Talagi ayetli udigale yoja gesa udigale yoja gesa. Dan kliha unlena ha unadal undalena unadat liga. This is the one I always have trouble with because there's lots of unas in there. Let's try that one more time. Dan kliha unlena. They started fighting. Undalena undat liga. Squeeze anione gane he. Pla unelagi eli san yige sen. Anioneg du do tlan san u du li he. Ayha taste anitalagi ane ha. Okay. Anioneg du do tlan san u du li he. Ayha taste anitalagi ane ha. All right. Well, misspelled that one. Oh well. This is Anioneg das Commission uno tlane duni sesti ane ha anitalaki. All right, so this is a new sentence for us. Let's take it a little bit at a time. All right, so this says Anioneg. Hopefully you know that word by now. The white people, das Commission, uno tlane. They made it, okay, uno tlane. They made or they created the das Commission, okay. Duni sesti. They counted them. Ane ha anitalaki. They counted where the Cherokees were living. Okay. Okay. Anioneg das Commission uno tlane duni sesti aneha anitalaki. Okay. All the Cherokees nigad aneha anitalaki. All the Cherokees that were living, okay? Anioneg das Commission uno tlane duni sesti, okay? Aneha anitalaki. Counted the living Cherokees, aneha. Okay. Das Commission una du he ayetli unidisti gadon anitalaki. Okay, so this one's an interesting sentence. Das Commission unduli he. They wanted ayetli. In this case, ayetli, we've learned ayetli can mean in the middle. It can mean nation. It can mean, but in this case, it means half. Okay, unidisti, to divide or to separate. Okay, to divide them, like kind of to cut them. Gado anitalaki, the Cherokee land. Okay, Gado, the land, anitalaki, the Cherokees. Okay, so in this case, they used the word gadon because they were really wanting to section off the land, okay, the land itself, okay? And so it creates slightly different picture, okay? Das Commission unduli he ayetli unidisti gadon anitalaki. So the Das Commission wanted to divide the Cherokee land. Okay? Okay. They were wanting to divide the land. Okay. Gado unihe. Gado unihe. Nikada. Anita laki. Kla. Anisia. We ha. Yige se. Okay. So, unihe. Ani. Ansiyanwi, Ansiyanwi, ha, Ansiyanwi, ha, you gay say. Okay, this one's kind of weird. Gadon, we know that's the word for land. Unihe, they owned it. Okay. Nikod Anijalaki, all Cherokees. Okay. So that part of the sentence says all Cherokees owned the land, okay? And the way it's written, they owned the same piece of land, okay? Okay. If it said Gadon du ni he nikada nitalaki, then that would say that all Cherokees owned their own pieces of land, okay? That they owned different pieces of land. But because this word here says unihe instead of dunihe, we know then that they owned one single parcel of land. So, so this is kind of an instance where in Cherokee, a small sentence can mean a whole lot. Because it's all implied. It's all written right there in the language. Okay? So these four little words, Kato uni he nikad anitalak, means that all Cherokees owned one piece of land. Okay? Tla ansiyanwi ha yigese. Okay? Anisiyanwi ha, that means individual. Kla anisiyanwi ha, not an individual. Okay? Yigese was. Okay? Putting it back in the past tense. Remember, a lot of times in Cherokee, we don't use the word was unless it needs to be in there either to indicate tense or it needs to be in there because there's not really a noun or there's not really another verb in there. Then sometimes they'll put it in there. But so this says all Cherokees owned the land, not an individual. Let's see how close. Oh, there we go. All right. So, Gadon uni he nikad anitalaki tla anisiya we ha yigese. Okay. So let's go back and let's talk about these three sentences. Or four sentences. Let's go back and let's go back to here. Okay, so Squisti ani yoneg ane he. Kla unelagi elisa yegese. Okay, so do you remember what this sentence was talking about? Squeezed ani yoneg ane. There were lots of white people. Kla unelagi elisa yegese. They didn't have permission. Okay. Lots of white people were living there. They did not have permission. Ani yoneg du do sa u du li he ayatasti anichalaki aneha. Okay, do you remember what this sentence roughly was about? Ani yoneg du do sa u du li he ayatasti anichalaki aneha. They wanted to separate, the white government wanted to separate where the Cherokees were living. Ani yoneg das commission unho tlane duni seesti ane ani chalaki. Ani yoneg das commission unho tlane. The whites created the Dawes Commission. Duni seesti ane ani chalaki. They counted the living Cherokees. Okay, duni seesti. Okay. Dun seesti ane ani chalaki. Dawes Commission. Undu li he ayetli unity sti ga do ani chalaki. Okay, the Dawes Commission wanted to divide in half the Cherokee land. Ga do uni he negad ani chalaki tla ani si yawi ha diagese. Okay, so the Cherokees, all Cherokees owned the land, not an individual. Okay, so so you can see how this was creating a lot of problems for the Cherokee people. And we're just going to talk a little bit in English, and then we'll go back to Cherokee. But I want you to understand, even though this is a language class, we also want to be sure that you understand a little bit about your own history and your own culture as well. So from time immemorial, we as Cherokee people, we never owned land individually. Even back east, even among the mixed bloods. And of course, people have different opinions about that. Some say, well, the mixed bloods at that time were taking advantage of that part of our culture, in that we did not own land individually. And so they would take vast tracts of land, particularly out on the prairies, out around Bartlesville, and where Will Rogers, Oologah, and in that area, because there were vast parts of prairie land. And we didn't own land in common, or we didn't own land individually, so you could utilize as much land as you wanted, or as you had the capabilities to do. And so many Cherokees at that time became very wealthy out in that area because they became ranchers, and they ran cattle, big cattle operations and things like that. So Cherokees only owned the improvements on the land. So if they built a house, if they built a well, if they built a barn, those kinds of things, they owned that. But as far as the land itself, it was actually owned by the Cherokee people. And some reservations are still operated this way. This is kind of typical on how reservations function and how they work. And so that's how we were. However, the Dawes Commission, a part of the civilization process, I guess you want to say, of the government at that time, they said, well, we want to encourage Cherokees and other Indians, because this was not just Cherokees, but this was all Indians. We want to encourage them to have ownership. Henry Dawes, the man who the Dawes Commission is named after, he was sent here to survey the Cherokee lands and the status of the Cherokee people. And remember that we were still rebuilding from the Civil War. And it's kind of amazing to think, because the Civil War, ended just maybe 30 years prior to this. And he reported back to the government, and he said, I've surveyed the Cherokee lands, and there's not a pauper, meaning there's not a poor person among them. Everyone has their own home, and there is no want. There is no hunger. Everyone is educated. Everyone goes to school. So he said, but the inherent flaw in this system is that the Cherokees have no selfishness. They have no desire to be better than their neighbors. And this is actually what he said. You can read this in his report. You can still read the report today. And he says, that the Cherokees don't want to be better than their neighbors. So they have no incentive to improve and to be better than the Joneses, basically. And so he advocated for giving them their own parcel of land, thinking that they would then become proud homeowners and land property owners. And this would instill in them a desire to be better than their neighbors are, and to have more than what their neighbors are, and encourage them to be selfish. Of course, we think of selfishness as being a negative thing, but to him, selfishness was what drove American expansion and the capitalist system, of course. Is this desire to have more and than you need. And so his answer to the whole thing, I think, is just hilarious, because he's like, well, nobody's poor, nobody's hungry, everyone's fed, everyone's clothed, everyone is educated, but they're backwards and they're ignorant and they're stupid because they don't own their own property. So I find it kind of funny that was the thinking of the time. And the Dawes Commission was created in order to encourage. They were trying to sell this idea that the Cherokees needed to divide up their lands, and of course there was also an ulterior motive with this, because if each individual Cherokee that was alive at the time received 360 acres or 380 acres of land, we held in common a lot more land than that. And so what the idea was, because there was a lot of pressure from white people coming in, the idea was that they were going to parcel out, divvy out all this land and property, and then what was left over, they were going to open up for white settlement. And so really this was kind of a way for the government to take back the land that they had set aside for our reservation. And so they were like, well, we'll give out all the land, and then once all the land is given out, whatever's left over, we're going to open it up for white settlement. Not taking into account that, Cherokees have children, and so all of these children then would have no land, and so then they would divide up the land that belonged to their parents, they would divide it up among all the children, and then their children, that would be divided up again, and then again and again. And we still live in this system today. Even today, we still have restricted land that may have, 50 or 60 owners, or 50 or 60 stakeholders in that piece of property, because that allotment has been divided and then divided again and then divided again and then divided again. So we still in that system today. There's still a lot of Cherokees who live on a small piece of their allotment. Some of it has been probated forward and it has been divvied out, and then some of them they refuse to probate it, because there are so many stakeholders in the land. They would have less than an acre of land, for them to build their house on or whatever. So it's a very problematic system. It's a very short-sighted system, but that's what we have inherited today. All right, so. So now hopefully you understand a little bit. If you don't live and work here, or you didn't grow up here, hopefully you kind of understand, the situation of the people who are here, and how some of these issues are very complicated now and very complex. So let's go back and let's see. Let's do. So they didn't have permission. Okay, let's do this one here. All right, so we've got about 12 minutes left. So in that time left, let me quiz you. We'll read through it, and then I'll see if you can understand what the individual words are doing in the sentence. So we'll read through it. This says, Ani yoneg du do tlansa, u du li he, aya tasti, ani jalaki aneha. So the white government wanted to divide where the Cherokees lived. Okay? Gatohyat du do tlansa, gatohyat du do tlansa, government. Du do tlansa. Gatohyat ani jalaki, the Cherokee people. Gatohyat ani yoneg, white people. Gatohyat undulihe, or udulihe, sorry, udulihe. Wanted, he or she or it wanted. Gatohyat ahyatasti, means to divide, ahyatasti. Gatohyat aneha, they were living, they were existing, they were there, aneha. Good job. Okay, let's try this one. Let's read through it. This says, Ani yoneg das commission uno tlane. Duni seesti aneha anitalaki. Okay, gatohyat ani yoneg. Gatohyat ani yoneg means white people. Gatohyat ani jalak. Cherokee people. Gatohyat aneha. lived or existed. Katohiat uno tlane, uno tlane. Katohiat uno tlane. It made it. It created it. Katohiat uni sesti. Katohiat duni sesti. Duni sesti. They to count them. They to count them. Okay? Okay, let's try this one. Das Commission undule he ayetle unity sti ka don anijalaki. Das Commission undule he ayetle unity sti ka don anijalaki. Okay, the Dawes Commission wanted to divide in half the Cherokee land. Okay. Katohiat undulihe. Katohiat undulihe. They wanted. Undulihe, they wanted it. Katohiat ayetli. Katohiat ayetli. Ayetli. In half. Katohiat unity sti. Unity sti. To divide. Katohiat anijalak. Katohiat anijalak. Cherokee people. Katohiat gadon. Katohiat gadon. Land. Land. Okay? We'll read this one. This says, Kato unihe nikata anijalaki tla ani siyawi ha yagese. Okay? All Cherokees owned the land, not an individual. Okay? Katohiat gadon. Katohiat gadon. Gadon. Land. Katohiat negada. Katohiat negad. Negada. All or everyone. Katohiat anisi yawi ha. Anisi yawi ha. Individual. Katohiat anijalak. Katohiat anijalaki. Cherokee people. Katohiat unihe. 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 They owned it. Unihe. They owned it. Okay? And then, of course, we have the word tlayigesen. Tlayigesen means it was not. Tlayigesen. Okay? So that's all the sentences that we have today. Hopefully, it's becoming easier and easier for you. Lots and lots of repetition. The more it's repeated, the more you hear it, the more it makes sense to you, the more you're going to just pick it up and you're going to acquire it, okay? Just keep practicing. Listen to the stories over and over and over again. You don't really even have to pay conscious attention to them. And then, the first step is comprehension, is understanding. And my daughter, that's kind of where she is. I can say a lot of things to her in Cherokee, and she understands. She knows what I'm talking about. But if I do it the other way and I ask her, to tell me in Cherokee something, even though she understands it, she can't produce it. And I find that very, very interesting, because, she hears it all the time. And, but I think our brains are very quirky, in that our brains really only halfway are listening to what's being said around us, and it picks up the patterns, but it doesn't pick them up well enough to reproduce them faithfully. It just picks out bits and pieces, and is like, oh, well, I know that means, am I hungry? Or, oh, I know that means he's asking, am I ready? Or, oh, I know that means, if I hear these couple of sounds together, I know that means, put your shoes on, or whatever. So, but the first step in acquiring a new language, of course, is to comprehend it first. And then you can worry about producing it yourself. That requires a deeper level of understanding whenever you start to produce it yourself. Even myself, I've been working on Cherokee, or working on acquiring Cherokee for a long, long time. And some subjects and stuff I can talk about, kind of off the top of my head, but others, if I write it down in English and I kind of look at it, I can work my way through it, and I can, put it together. But doing it off the top of my head, I'm not quite there yet for everything. So just keep working at it, keep doing, just keep doing what you're doing. And from all of us here at RSU TV and at Cherokee Nation, I do want to say wadon. And Galiele, I'm very grateful. And don't dago ha'i till we see each other again. Thanks.